Watch Now,
where we talk about what's streaming on Netflix right now. And in today's episode, we are talking about She's Gotta Have It Season 2. Ooh, I fucking love this. This just makes me love Spike Lee just for this alone. Now, I'm gonna be real with you. I preferred season 1 over this one. Now, I did not think season 2 was bad. I think you should totally still watch it. I still had a good time. But, you know, I have a Twitter in the description below. Let me know what your preference was. There's just something about season 1 that was a little more rewatchable to me. But I still agree with all the creative choices that were made for season 2 because that was the evolution of Nola Darling. That is the evolution of where she needed to go into. Just a quick reminder, do not forget to subscribe. Tell a friend. Consider becoming a Patreon supporter today. But let's get into kind of like what was season 1 compared to season 2 and then just talking about just all of season 2. So the reason why I prefer season 1, but I guess we're not talking about preferences, we're just talking about the comparison of where it needed to go in a positive way. So it's all about Nola Darling, played by DeWanda Wise, which, by the way, beautiful fucking name. I love Nola Darling as a name, but DeWanda Wise, what a cool ass name. So, Nola Darling, when we first meet her in season 1, is kind of this idyllic, someone who would go against the grain. She dates multiple men. She's proud of her of sexuality. She can't be pinholed. She's an artist, but she has love and concern for other people. She's not trying to hurt anyone or be destructive, and she's very educated, and she comes from artistic parents. But we watch this like kind of idyllic, lovable person become more flawed and exposed and kind of fall apart in a way that made her that much more relatable and understanding. And she really opened up a lot of conversations that branched not just like Black culture and Black women, but I think branched into just general ideas about women and communities and people suffering and like everything. There was just so many things described as one. Like, that is what is so amazing about this series in general. Like, I think it can be appreciated on many different levels from many different communities. So then we have going into where it went by the end of season 1 to season 2. So it ended with their Thanksgiving dinner with her introducing all the lovers to each other. And it kind of ended even ambiguously with them all dancing. And it wasn't her saying like we're getting all together, but kind of like finding a harmonious piece and kind of showing herself. Kind of like she had really suffered from the trauma of being assaulted, made it her own artistically with a street art design that then got defaced by someone and then got her identity revealed by her agent, and it kind of just became this thing where she was regathering herself. I think that's what's most relatable about Nola is that's what it's like being a person. It's feeling like you're riding sky high and then feeling like everything's falling apart and then somehow coming all back together in one, and the up and down journey. And Nola falls hard and rises even harder. So I think that perfectly defines her. So where do we go from Nola? Is she going to keep seeing these 3 men? What are their relationships with her and her life? In reality, she's going to evolve from that. She's going to always go against the grain. So she was someone who probably at the time was seeing all her peers more into, you know, going through the rat race of dating and dating one person. And she went, why do I have to settle? Why can't I get a little bit from each beautiful soul? And then she went against herself again and went, you know what? I want to try monogamy. I want to try a stable relationship. And she was lucky enough to try it with the person who in the first season seemed the most compatible with her, Opal. I mean, this was the person that out of anybody, she was like, I am in love with. I'm in love with her. I love her kid, everything. And she goes through a lot of fucking bullshit with Opal. Opal drives me up a goddamn fucking wall. I think they did a great job capturing this relationship and how it didn't work. So Opal's kind of one of those people that wants to be really controlling, but then wants to accuse you of not taking, you know, the steps forward to get in control of your life, even though they might be an inhibitor, not an inhibitor like financially, but be the one being like setting the ground and being like, it has to be this way. It's like, it's telling your loved one, I never want to be surprised. And then telling your loved one, why am I never surprised? Why do you never surprise me? And in this case, she clearly also wanted a family unit, and her daughter loved Nola, even considered her one of her mommies. And this sent Opal up a wall of being like, no, this is my daughter, this is us, kind of this sense of separation, when she clearly wanted a family unit and was mad at both and either. It was disrespectful to the relationship, and it was disrespectful to Nola. It's okay to draw lines in the sand to a certain degree or express frustration, but she even had this insultive quality to making comments about her artistic pursuits and being, like, one great conversation between them that I thought was great point-wise is, so because Nola had success with this "My Name Isn't" campaign, a sense of thing that was like a artistic way to defy her grief and overcome her shit, and it was started to get picked up by a listeners service, like a streaming listening service. And she's kind of grappling with the idea of, like, should I work with them? Should I not work with them? And Opal's like, everyone around her is like, why wouldn't you want to work with them? You would make a lot of money. And she's saying, well, I don't know. I think they just want to use my trauma for money, and I kind of can't get down with that. And a lot of other artistic reasons. I feel like I'm betraying my fans. I feel like I'm betraying myself, so on and so forth. And Nola kind of makes the point of saying, if I wasn't supporting you financially, would you still be, have the freedom to make that decision? Which, it's like, her point isn't less valid, but I still think it's inappropriate in the relationship. And she's an extremely combative, like, wants to be right all the time type of person in a way that's detrimental towards growth as a person. So these conversations that Spike Lee has are amazing with their characters, because it's a lot of, like, I see both sides, and I think everybody has a great point to be made, and they both need to be discussed. This goes into even just the terrible interaction before Nola and Opal are still together. She ends up having this, accidentally picking up Skylar, and the person who she previously slept with last season, who had a wife, they were technically separated, may I add, at the time. He ended up, the wife recognized her, because Skylar and her son were kind of like friends or whatever, and she takes Nola off into a corner and says so many offensive things to her, like, oh, you make $10,000 in a month, and if it's $1 a blowjob, you got that many dicks in your mouth a month, you're a world star hoe. I mean, just one in a million comments that is so offensive and upsetting, because, like, on one hand, Nola did the right thing by just sitting there and being like, look at yourself. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to take it back, because obviously she's aware of the wrong that she did and the destruction she did. But she's also, like, really sad and sad to see someone, like, be so detrimental to themselves. I think she made the right decision, but ultimately, that's why the character, I think the woman plays an amazing job, but the character who's the wife of that gentleman she slept with last season, she is just, her character is such a dick, because she tends to be someone who, the husband pointed this out the best, it's like, she just wants to ignore her past and her culture, but when it's convenient, she'll bring it up and use it in a kind of defensive way, and I think that's pretty fucked up on many levels, and like, in reality, she didn't take any time to ask any questions. I mean, let's be real here, she's mad that her husband has a mistress, but they were separated at the time, they weren't even together romantically, she is with someone else now. I think that's pretty, I totally understand her being fucked up and her being upset by all that shit, but, like, realistically, it's like, girl, you act as if you were in a totally loving, committed relationship, and it was like he totally cheated on you. It was seen out of nowhere. I mean, I agree it's still not appropriate and a lot of other things, but, like, fuck, girl, you ain't no angel is what I'm trying to say. So that was really upsetting to see Nola go through that, and Nola was pretty traumatized by that, and she shielded Skyla from it, but she unfortunately gets in a fight a couple days later or a week later or something with Opal, and Opal disgustingly just is so mean to her, pointing out her flaws and her inconveniences. It's kind of like, you know what's disgusting about it? She said, I want you to totally be yourself in the relationship. And she was. And from day one, Nola never lied about who she was or what she went through. And this is one of the things that offends me the most, the idea of when someone's struggling to make money as an artist. It's like, do you think they want to struggle? Do you think that they're trying to? Like, of course she's trying. She's not being lazy. It's not a lack of effort or work or seeking employment. It's like, that's the profession often. It's this up and down thing. And to use that against her in a fight, and this is the most disgusting one. When she brought up the trauma that she experienced sleeping with that other person, she used it against her and said that she was messy and she didn't want that messiness being brought on to Skylar. And it's just really disgusting and inappropriate as a woman and as a human to not ask the situation, not see that your lover was traumatized by that. Talk to them. I think that's how much I hated Opal by the end of it. I mean, she was just the fucking worst. Her daughter was even worse because she called her out inappropriately. I think Nola honestly should have said something. She gave this kid a little too much leeway, a little too much love. And I gotta tell you, this is very triggering for me. I've come in contact with way too many kids that speak to you in a way that's absolutely inappropriate. And these adults are so dumb and spoiled and, they treat their children spoiledly and let them get away with it. And all I can think is, you look around and you wonder why some people are the way they are. It's because of parents like you not drawing a line in the sand and saying, this is not your conversation to have. And in a situation with Skyla, a long time later, she has a conversation after Opal and her have broken up in this traumatizing way, which really fucked up Nola for some time. I mean, she tried. She tried to do the right thing. She even took on some of the fights and did what she could to be accommodating to Opal, and it just wasn't fucking enough for her. It was so sad to watch and see. So when Skyla confronts her about her previous experience with the guy, she can only admit, yes, I technically knew he had a kid, and yes, I technically knew he had a husband, but from what I can remember, I don't think she knew for a very long time, and she was mad at him about that, I think. It was like, gross. Like, I don't want to be caught up in your shit. I don't want to be... That's why it was gross when everyone kind of saw her as the mistress, when I want to be like, mistress? She hasn't dated the guy in like 2 years. Wifey poo, you've been separated from him from some time. You've been dating other people. You know, a lot of other shit. It was so upsetting to watch this little girl be judgmental when I'd be like, honey, you don't know where you're going to be in 20 years. You shut the fuck up. And also, this is the person you loved and gave you all this kindness and good deeds, and you're going to disrespectfully talk to her like that and still be friends. I think Nola should have written them both out of their life. Her daughter had as ugly as personality as Opal did. It was so gross. I hated that part. That was really rough to see and watch. So I like this beginning couple episodes where we see her, trying to have a relationship, trying to make do the right thing. But then she ends up it becomes what it really needs to be. Nola going through a fucking journey. Because that is the evolution of Nola ultimately. Because that's what the show's about. Nola, not the people she's with. It starts off with her developing herself personality-wise through different relationships. Seeing what she likes, what she doesn't like, where she wants to set boundaries, where she doesn't. That whole situation in the first season when she wore a dress and a lot of guys wanted her to cover herself up and she felt insulted that she couldn't just be herself and have people be excited for her, and then to be assaulted in that same manner, in that vulnerable sense of the confidence and sexual confidence. And then afterwards, she decides to be vulnerable emotionally in the way she never had with the others, and that gets thrown in her face too. So she decides, you know what? I gotta move on, and she tries to lose herself in her artwork. And I don't blame her she's going through a time period of losing herself. I mean, it gets thrown in her face where, like, whenever she has these moments of power, it bites her in the ass. Like, a good example of that is she ends up getting invited to a very special retreat type of thing with other well-known black artists. And there's this one gentleman there, the white gentleman he's just totally, like, propagating. He's one of those, like, I should call them wiggers. I don't know if that's an offensive term, but that's what he is. The people that... try to, what is it called when you appropriate someone else's culture inappropriately? And he was wearing like gold teeth, and she calls him out at the dinner, basically being like, you were the one that defaced my artwork, fuck you. And he goes up to her and he essentially is like, no, I agree with you. You made the right choice. And because I agree with you so much, that $10,000 you're going to get as a stipend, I'm going to give it to someone else that, to kind of in a supportive way. So that he took away $10,000 she really needed, and he had the upper hand and power in that moment. And it was so fucked up and bitter in the ass, but she did the right thing for standing up for herself and calling out this fucker who was trying to bond with all these people when he was the same simultaneous person to do some fucked up shit that went against everything he was saying he was for. So it was sad to see her, like, go through that time and time and time again. And ultimately, she gets this sense of, like, peace, this emotional kind of resurrection when she goes to Puerto Rico. Loved her relationship. I thought was really interesting with the three other boys. We do get to see, and we actually mostly see Mars, which I appreciate, because out of all the boys, I felt the deepest connection and interest in Mars. The husband guy was the person who pissed me off the fucking most. He judged and wanted to control Nola. He had too much baggage. He wasn't a good guy. So many things and a half. He just drove me up the wall nuts. While on the other hand, I cannot fucking think of his name. I'm just gonna call him French for now. Wait, let me look at his name real quickly. So the previous guy was Jamie Overstreet, played by Lyric Bent, and the other gentleman, Greer Childs, was played by Cleo Anthony. And I loved how he, in the first season, went from someone that was pretty vain and into photography to being quite sensitive and deep, and there was a lot more to him and more capability, especially emotionally to him, than Nola gave him the opportunity. Like, she was, by not getting to know him, represented a sign of herself that was still a little bit judgmental that she had to overcome. And in this season, he has a totally happy monogamous relationship, but he genuinely wants to be friends with Nola, and it's really sweet and platonic. And it's nice to see Nola just a little bit jealous, not because of anything other than, like, she's not jealous of him or whatever. She's just jealous of having love and this connection, and she's able to kind of overcome her grief in that way. And then last but not least, by Anthony Ramos, who has got to be one of the cutest cutie patooties I have seen in a long time. Holy shit, he is so cute. Mars Blackmon. Now, Mars is unfortunately going through the gigs himself this season, and he unfortunately loses his job through gentrification. His coffee shop, this bike shop he worked at, gets closed down, and he loses his, like, job in, like, a single day, the poor guy. He's unable to pay rent, and his sister kicks him out. And kind of like all season, he's in a position where he's trying to find a place to stay. And despite everything, he's always trying to make the right decision, treat people appropriately, stand up for people when they need to. I mean, I loved how he talked to, what was her fucking name? Clore? I'm going to call her Clore for now, because I can't remember her name. She was... Whenever she did something wrong to fuck up Nola's shit, he always, like, stood up for Nola. I loved that shit. It was beautiful. But he eventually invites Nola down to Puerto Rico because, again, a big part of this season 2 is, like, a giant love letter to Brooklyn, to black culture, to black women, to women in general, to people, to gentrification, to poets, artists of every nationality. I mean, this whole entire season will just constantly stop and pause and show you an artist, their album, whatever. I mean, it is so just one beautiful quote or monologue after the other. It's a giant discussion and love letter. I especially really loved the discussion, and we'll go into this in a second, about the idea of what it's like being an artist and compromising and what the whole deal is, but especially the conversation at the very end of Nola's big art show, but we'll get to those two conversations in a second. So Nola gets invited by Mars to go down to Puerto Rico because of the whole apartment losing situation. He's going to go visit his mom and his sister. He's going to go live in Puerto Rico. He's going to give music a real shot and stuff like that. And he's like, do you want to come down with me? And she's like, yeah, of course. And when she's down there, she ends up having a really beautiful, deep, meaning conversation with Mars' mom, who was so fucking amazing. I loved it. I was so excited to see that actress again. I was like, oh my God, I love this. And she is very religious. And I can't remember the religion they practice. I can't remember if it's Santeria, if I'm correct. Oh, if I'm wrong, I apologize. So she is, she's very spiritual. And she is very quick to kind of, like, clearly she's in touch with fucking something, because she immediately, while she seems like she's going to jokingly hound her for a second for potentially getting with Mars, because she can see that there's a clear bond between the two of them that she thinks that will eventually flourish, she more focuses on the fact that she can tell Nola is lost and needs to get her shit together and eventually connect to her artistic side. She needs to point out that her goal is to speak for other people who cannot speak, and that is her main purpose, and she needs to go back to serving it. And I think it was just the thing Nola needed to experience. She then experiences some beautiful other women wearing a gorgeous traditional, or I don't know if it's traditional. I can't actually say that. I don't know. Beautiful yellow hair wrap with beautiful dress, and they all keep calling her Oshin's daughter, I think it was, or Oshun's daughter. Again, I'm not familiar with that subtext, but so beautiful. I guess it was clearly some sort of like divine spiritual things that really helped her connect with that idea. And I love that fisherman with the beautiful jewels on his face that he wore, and a bunch of other experiences. And it was kind of like just what she needed to kind of get her shit together, figure out what she needed to say. And she ends up putting on this big solo act. Two big things happen for her. She has a campaign that gets changed on her, and it's upsetting because when it gets changed, she compromised. She got money to, do what she wanted, got paid for this campaign, decided to compromise and find a way to make it her voice, change it a little bit, amplify it, and still have it kind of be the whole "my name isn't" idea. But then at the last minute, this colorful text gets turned into black and white, and she feels like kind of more reminisces and defaces back to the idea of her trauma, back to what they wanted to take from her in the first place, and she's upset by it. She stands up for herself. She makes a conversation, and I love the artist, the person who was representing her has the conversation back and points out, she too didn't think she had power, or thought she had power and it got taken away from her. It shows the bullshit that, she's experiencing even at the higher level where she has all this power. It's like the bullshit just continues and it continues in that community, especially with Black women, and it's just showing, like, no matter what situation they're in, like, it's important to fight for it, but unfortunately these are the compromises that some people are experiencing, and it's upsetting, and I feel for them. And so Nola does the right thing because she stands up for herself. She speaks her voice, but thankfully she still gets the paycheck. And I just want to point that out, Nola. It's a really good thing you got the paycheck. And then she even has an art show. And the art show totally moves everyone. Everyone fucking loves it. It's like she's done something really important, and she has this particular piece in the back, hidden behind a curtain, and you only go in at one at a time, and everyone leaves with a different type of expression. And I didn't know if they were going to actually show the art piece, and then when they did, I was like, holy shit. Okay, we're going there. So she has an important conversation with her best friend, and pretty much everyone loved it in a twisted way kind of thing. The art piece was an image of her, kind of like almost naked, but almost like she's wearing part of a cloth, but she's pretty much naked. You can see her naked, and she's painted in a red flag, and she's being hung by her long braids, by her own long braids. It's a very vivid, violent action. And her friend kind of had this really interesting, amazing conversation. Like, if you could watch any part of She's Gotta Have It for some sort of movement or emotional thing, I would definitely say check out that part of it, because it's the most, like, serious and important conversation. And I like that Spike Lee does not shy away from those conversations, because I myself want to know what people think, and I've thought those ideas too, just being like, I see both sides. What is the answer? So the friend points out that she thought it was fucked up that Nola expressed art in that way, that it's her job to speak for their community, but in a way that progresses us and speaks to them and it motivates them. That just seems like it's perpetuating violence. It's kind of that conversation she even has with her agent, the idea of, like, what do you do when you don't want to see it anymore and you kind of don't want to hear about it anymore? You just want to kind of be done with it and move forward. I don't know if it's always the healthiest idea to stay in that conversation of the past Black people have experienced. Like, that's what the agent was saying, and that's what the friend was kind of saying, like, this isn't the way about going about it. But then on the other hand, Nola says, like, we can't shy away from these things, and also it's my right to evolve. It's my right to discuss the dark. Don't you think it's somehow imprisoning me by not being able to express that? And it was really sad and heartfelt when she said, I just want you to know, people might be telling you they're all in agreement with you and they're on your side, but they'll be talking behind your back. And I want you to know I'm always going to be straight with you, but I will in public say that I agree with you and I support you. But just know that I do not support this. And I like that it kind of ended on a dark note, that it's weird. Like, a lot of the season for Nola ended up turning into a more positive thing compared to by the end of She's Gotta Have It, the first season. But the first season, She's Gotta Have It, it was this cute dancing scene. It was very ultimately happy and uplifting. While the second season kind of has this moment of intense seriousness and an important discussion. And I don't know if I just want to know what you guys think. Like, how did that touch you? What is your, like, opinion? What does that feel like for you? Because it's a very interesting discussion. I mean, that's what they discuss a lot of the time throughout the season, is just, like, what do you do with this bullshit happening to you in real time? Like, you know, how do you fight it and move forward and find something uplifting, but not keep perpetuating the violence? Or should you talk about the violence, talk about the inequality in a way, but how can that also uplift? Because sometimes it's like when people check Twitter too much. It's like you start to get so bogged down and feel like all is lost. You just lose yourself in the day-to-day and just wanting to, you know, date and have fun and have friends. It's kind of like, where can I find my... When you hear about all the lack of opportunities, when do I... That's why people get really excited by figures that are succeeding. It's like they're representing this vibe of like, look, I was myself. I had everything against me, and I'm doing well. And some people want that too. So it's like, I mean, I'm a big believer of having it all because everything has something to offer, and I don't think we should ever close out freedom of speech in the past and so on and so forth. But, like, example, okay, so, like, this is a bit of a personal story. I don't want to go into it too much, but, like, okay, so I'm, like, extremely empathetic to the point that it's, like, very emotionally hard for me to hear about a lot of this shit that's happened in history because it's just too much. And in my particular school system, we taught the Holocaust, like, nearly, like, every fucking year. And every year it was, like, way too much for me. It was too hard. It's like, I got the fucking point, and also, like, it's just too much for me. And I was in a class that was a humanities class, and we had a lot of interesting discussions, and we all fucking hated our teacher, but without our permission, essentially, by the second half semester, it got turned into a Holocaust class because a Holocaust class that was going to exist only had 3 members, but for some reason it was okay to join it with ours and just turn it into a uniformed Holocaust class. So they talked about Holocaust, genocides, everything you don't want to get into is all I gotta say. And it was hard. I was going home every day crying. It was like, okay, I gotta keep this shit together. It was too much for me. It was too fucking much for me. And it was just exactly what I'm talking about. It's like there is a point where it gets to be too much and you don't really feel a sense of hope. So it was a really good discussion. Yeah. I can't go. Hold on. I gotta pull myself out. Okay, and then the last ending note I gotta say is I really loved the discussion about standing true to your art, but trying to make a buck. It isn't discussed enough. People feel they sell a whole idea of like, how do I more focus on what other people want and make a living as an artist? Some people are like, well, how do I be myself and find the people and the projects that will connect with my art? It's a discussion that goes on and on and on. When do you compromise? When do you don't? Because the thing with Nola is she does not want to compromise ever. And I don't blame her. I get it. I understand how important her art is to her. I don't blame her in the least. I think all of her feelings and her emotions are valid. But fucking girl, you have an apartment complex that is a rent controlled because of a family friend. What happens when that family friend dies and you don't have a rent controlled place to pay? And she's still relatively young. I kind of get the vibe she's probably like 30 or something like that, relatively young. What do you do if you can't afford the sales property tax if you inherited your parents' house? What do you do if you aren't going to inherit any money because your parents are relatively poor? What do you do if you don't have a partner with you, which is, again, fine. These things are all fine. You can totally... I'm not pitching to go get married and go sell yourself out to a job, but, like, do you know how normal it is? Like, do you know how many really well-known artists I've talked to who are like, oh, I had a second job, like a job that paid the bills and trying to get my art to be something until I was, like, 45. It's super normal for people to have second jobs, but they just don't talk about it. It's like a secret. And sometimes Nolan is, like, so on a high horse about morals that I'm like, girl, there needs to be some medium. Like, I thought it was offensive what Opal said to her, but on the other hand, Opal made a point. It's like, what would you do if I wasn't here supporting you, giving that ability? How would you... I mean, remember when she got in the first season that letter that basically gave her the $7,000 that would pay Mint for a couple rents, and she, like, cried with so much happiness because she desperately needed it. She was running into a really serious, desperate, stressful situation. So it's like, on one hand, what if she doesn't compromise her morals in all her life? She just in the nick of time gets the project or money she needs and everything works out and she gets to live her life morally the way she wants and she pays the bills. Good for her. But you can't always predict that. And you don't always know what the future will hold for you, especially with age, because a lot of people are ageist and don't want to hear about your new special project anymore by the time you're 50. They only want to care about the hip new kids. So it's so fucking hard to tell. And I don't know, I'm a big believer of, like, you can have both. Like, as someone who was, like, a poor artist for a very, 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 very long time, let's just say the majority of my life, I would have taken the gig if I had been given the opportunity to be like, okay, you're going to give me, $10,000 to do, or $5,000 to do this project where maybe it's not exactly what I want, but I'll try to find a way to make it work, you know what I'm saying? And then maybe the rest of the time do what I actually want to do. You see what I'm saying? A lot of people do that. You have no idea how many people maybe write, like, young adult fiction novels, but then their real true passion is, like, something else, a little more serious tone or mystery toned or something like that. So you just figure, you got to find a compromise sometimes. So that's just my personal opinion. I would love to know yours, but I liked that he brought up that serious discussion of, it's like, we're having all these ideas about, like, idealism and how we want it to be, but what is the answer? Or what do you do if you can't pay the bills? Or what do you do if you can't solve this? Loved the conversation where Papo became divine, and he had the conversation with the gentrification woman, and just, like, his general kind of, the evolution of him coming out of jail and, like, finding himself, and that's so sad he went through what he went through, and his kind of, like, representation and everything like that. Loved Mars finding himself. I'm trying to think if I can think of anyone. Just a lot of beautiful evolution. It was just very dark and serious, a love letter to a lot of artistic things, and it was really good. You should totally check it out. I would love to know what you guys thought, because poor Nola went through the fucking gigs this season. I felt so bad for her. I thought, though, that she really became someone she should be proud of, and I think she did a lot of cool shit, and I think she's just growing and growing and growing, and I think every season she's going to get that much more powerful and, figure out how to be both respectful and kind and say what she needs to say and be able to say it the next chance she gets to. I think most of the time she does, but sometimes those moments catch us all off guard. So, yeah. And plus, also, back to the whole money thing, I just want to clear up. Her situation was different, though, because she had to morally compromise a traumatic situation for her art. So that's, like, a totally different subject, and I totally get her perspective in that way. But, yeah. Let me know what you guys think. I love you in the most platonic way possible. I hope you have a beautiful day. Bye!